This is the Garmin GTN series, the overview. So the first thing I'm going to do is power up the Garmin 750. I'm going to touch the screen to continue. Tap the screen here to acknowledge this. And this is here where the Garmin will initialize the databases. Tap the screen to continue. And the first thing I want to focus on the initialization page is the fuel on board. If I tap the fuel section here, you can see here the little keypad will come up with some hot buttons at the bottom for full fuel and tabs. I'm going to tap the full fuel. You see I get 78 gallons. I'm going to tap the tabs. I get 35 gallons. Or I can just enter the fuel I have on board the aircraft right now straight away and press enter. 43 gallons. Now if I go back into fuel on board, I can actually set this up at the bottom. You can see here this is my fuel capacity setup. And here I can enter in what my default full fuel would be for the aircraft I'm in and press enter. Then I can go into tabs, enter in my tab fuel and press enter. And then all I have to do is go back. So anytime I want to tell the Garmin that I have full fuel, I just tap the hotkeys. Or again, I can tell it straight away, hey, look, that's nice, but here's how much fuel I have on board, 36 gallons. For the fuel flow, you just simply tap the button and enter in the aircraft's average fuel flow and press enter. This area here is my instrument panel self-test. Many of us are familiar with that, and that's where you find it. Then I'll press continue. This brings me to the home page. So now that I'm at my home page, I thought let's start from the top and work our way left to right.
TAWS system test. Okay.
So the first thing up here is the COM volume 2 knob. So you obviously, if I turn the knob to the left, my volume comes down. If I turn it to the right, the volume comes up. If I tap it in once, it'll break squelch. If I actually hold the button in for 2 seconds, it will automatically tune guard 121.5. Now I'm going to show that to you again. So I'm going to set the frequency back to 118.0. And I want you to note there'll be a little box that pops up next to the frequency telling you as I hold it in. I'm going to hold it in for 2 seconds. It says hold for emergency frequency, and it automatically puts in 121.50. So now that we've talked about that, hey, let's focus on the frequencies. So I'm going to tap on the standby. That brings me in the COM standby keypad that drops down. I'm going to enter in a frequency, 118.6. Press enter. And note, it gets placed in my standby position. If I want to flip-flop that to the active frequency, I tap the green active frequency. So now, I can also tune my frequencies using the little knob at the bottom. By pushing it in, changes it from COM to nav. And just like before on the Garmin 400-500 series, I can use the concentric knob to dial in my frequencies. When I've got it entered in, I just simply tap the green active frequency. Again, I can scroll in a frequency here, 118.50. If I hold the frequency in the button in, the concentric knob in, it also places the frequency up in the active. And I'll talk about that more when we get to the COM section. Now let's look at the audio panel. So I tap audio panel. The big thing I want you to note here is the microphone selection is on the right, not the left. It's on the right. I can listen here by selecting my monitored radios. I can split the radios. Here the pilot's talking on COM 1, the co-pilot's talking on COM 2, or I can tap, and now the co-pilot's talking on COM 1, the pilot's talking on COM 2. Very user-friendly, again, because you can see it graphically. My key point, again, is remember the microphones are on the right. I still tend to have a problem with that. Here's my playback controls. This is where I can play back my last transmission to air traffic control, or what they said to me. Hit the back button. Down here, I can turn my cabin speaker on. I can turn the marker audio on and put the markers to high sensitivity. I can change the speaker volume, marker volume. It's pretty user-friendly. Now let's look at the intercom. I really love the intercom setting here. This is just fantastic. The reason is, as an instructor, you just tend to see people who've had an intercom audio panel for years and they still have no idea how to use it. So by creating what we call flow bars, now the pilot is talking to the co-pilot, and the co-pilot is able to talk to the passengers. Now the pilot can talk to the passengers. And by creating these graphical flow bars, it's very easy to get your quick picture of who's talking to who. By actually tapping on the buttons that are labeled volume squelch, you can actually set the volume for the pilots and the squelch as well. Down at the bottom, we've got the music for the pilot, co-pilot, passenger. It's known as the music distribution. I can choose when the music mutes, whether it's during a aircraft radio transmission or it's intercom. Music 2 would be obviously if you carried an iPod. And for the telephone, love the intercom panel here. It's really great, very user-friendly, wonderful user interface. Up here, you can actually change the microphones straight away, right from the top. Still seeing people don't understand that. You can listen to ATIS just by tapping the monitor. So if you're talking on radio 1, you want to listen to ATIS on number 2, just press the monitor. Really simple. Remember, it's right there at the top in the center for you to change your microphone selection and add a listen monitored radio as well. Let's talk about the transponder. Transponder is pretty simple. You just type the code there. I'm currently in the standby mode right now. I'm going to enter a code of 2614, and I'm going to place the transponder in altitude reporting mode because I want you to see something. All right, at the top there, see it's grayed out. It says transponder, enter NID. That's if ATC said to you, squawk 2614 and ident. So as I put it in altitude mode, notice how it's now no longer grayed out. I can actually tap the button straight away. I could press enter here, but I'm going to press that top button, which actually is enter NID. It will enter the code 2614 and ident at the same time. More on the comm section. Now let's look at nav. Here at nav, again, I can hit my standby frequency and enter a frequency in, 113.30. I can press enter. It places it in the standby position. If I want to flip-flop it to the active, I just tap the active green frequency. I press the standby again, 115.60. And if I push the transfer button, that will put it straight away into the active frequency. It's one of the hard things that you're seeing people get used to, is that you can put frequencies straight away into the active if you wish. Now here's the home button. The home button will take you to the default nav page. All right, so here's the home button. And I just want you to see, if I tap the home button and I hold it in for 2 seconds, it takes you to the default nav page. If I just tap home button once, it takes me to the home page. Okay, here's weather. All right. If I press home and hold it for 2 seconds, it'll dump me straight into my default nav page. Just like if I was home and I had pressed the map icon. So here's home, and if I tap the map icon, that's my default nav page. Okay, I can hit back, and back will take me back to the home page. So let's step through the icons. Here's traffic. I can hit home, takes me to the home page. Here's terrain. I can zoom in or out. I've got my menu options. I can inhibit the TAWS. I can even test the TAWS if I wanted to. See, it says terrain test in the lower left-hand corner. I can hit the back button now.
TAWS system test. OK.
To go back to my home page. Here's weather. I can hit menu. Here's where I get all my features I can turn on. Right there, I've turned on the next rad to US. A lot of great features here. Love the weather page. Fantastic. Remember, it's an overview. Here's charts. The charts come up. I can hit the full button to make the chart come full screen. And if you couple this with a Jeppesen chart view subscription, it really gets good. You can do the geo-reference charts. Here's the flight plan. I hit menu to go to the catalog. And this is where I can find all my stored flight plans. I go back. Takes me to the active flight plan. I hit back again, and I'm back to the home page. I hit procedure. Here's where I can select an approach. I can choose the approach. Choose the transition. I can look at the chart. Or I can hit home, and home takes me to the home page. Here's nearest for nearest airports, intersections, VORs, all the things that we're used to seeing in the nearest chapter. I can hit the back button. I hit the back button again, takes me back to the home page. Here's the waypoint info chapter. I spend a lot of time in here, especially on the airports. You can do user waypoints, but you definitely will get used to using this page. You use it a lot. We'll talk about that more later. Here's your music chapter for your XM Weather subscription. We go back again. Back takes me to the home page. Here's utilities. This is where you'll find VCalc, which is similar to VNav, what we used to see. And if you go to clean the screen, remember we're constantly touching the screen, right? This is where you use this feature so you can clean the screen and then hit the home button when you're done. Here's system. And the big thing on system now is pushing the setup button. When you push the setup button, we're going to get a lot of features that many of us are used to seeing. Number one, for me personally, is I like to fly with my time set to UTC because I fly IFR all the time. I can go down here to nearest airport criteria and enter in a runway length, say 3,000 feet. Press enter. And then when I'm done, I simply just hit the back button. There's the backlight for people who fly at night. I haven't had any issues so far with these units flying at night. Press the back button. Back button again brings me home. Again, holding the map down, holding that home key down for 2 seconds will take me to my default nav page. Let's look at the direct button. So if I press the direct button here, I can either choose something from the waypoint, flight plan, or nearest airport. In this case, I'm actually just going to type in the name of the Phoenix VOR and press enter. And then hit direct activate in the lower right hand corner to make that my direct to waypoint. You can see on my status bar it says I'm direct PXR. Very cool. I'm going to go back to the home page, and I'm going to come back into the map because I want you just to see how I got out and came back in. And down here at the bottom, this is where you change your CDI from GPS to VLOC. A lot of people are having a hard time finding this. You got to remember now, it's found in the default nav page. Here's where you go to OBS. You would use your course knob to change the Omni bearing selector. And as you can see, as I would be twisting a course knob, this is where the course would actually change on the movie map. You can see it says OBS 205. That's where I exit OBS mode. And also, this is where I zoom in and zoom out on the map. You can see down at the bottom are my status. I've got terminal, GPS, and it says there down at the lower right-hand corner, COM and nav frequencies. And by pushing the concentric knob in, we'll toggle between COM and nav. And it tells me at the bottom what I'm doing. Here's where I enter a frequency in. If I hold the knob in, it'll actually flip-flop that frequency in for me. People often ask, well, why do they have that feature? It's if you were in really bad turbulence and you'd grabbed onto the knob and were holding onto the knob. What I want you to see how else the knob works is if I go to the flight plan and I enter a waypoint in here, I'm going to enter in the Drake VOR, Delta Romeo Kilo. I want you to see, notice in the lower right-hand corner it says push for enter. Once I enter in the K, I'm going to hold the knob in, and that will actually enter that waypoint into my flight plan. I'm holding it in for 2 seconds, let go, and boom, it puts it in my flight plan. Remember, I normally press the enter button. The reason they have this feature here is if your hands were getting bumped all around, you could just grab onto that concentric knob in the lower right-hand corner to do some of your COM and flight plan entries, which is kind of nice. Home button takes me to the home page. And that's a great little quick overview of the Garmin GTN750. Let's look at pro tip number 1. Pro tip number 1 is press and holding the COM button will automatically tune the guard frequency 121.5. Pro tip number 2 is press and holding the home button will take you to the default nav map page.